You know, at the Historical Society, I started a sports archives and tried to get a sports archives. And you might remember Scott, or no, Scott Longert.
Yes.
And he worked for me at the
Yeah.
Historical Society, and he had a great interest in history of sports. So we tried to generate interest in developing a collection of sports memorabilia at the Historical Society, but it really never got off the ground. And the Browns collection per se didn't become my interest until after I retired. And what started me in that direction was attending a Fusco auction, Paul Fusco, and a sports auction. And I happened to be walking along and the auction table and seeing all the various items that were for sale. And there was this one football card showing Jim Brown in a pose on his knee with a football. And I'm looking at this card and I'm saying, gosh, I have that picture it was in a newspaper and I put it in my scrapbook when I was a kid, and or I shouldn't say a kid, but a young man, and lo and behold, I went home and checked the scrapbook and unfolded this page, and it was the same pose. So I thought, oh my gosh, this is so coincidental. I've got to get that card. So I went back to the auction and I bought the 1961 National City Bank, which was issued in a sheet. Actually, there were, I think, 35 cards in the sheets, in 6 sheets. And this one image of Jim Brown was card number 2, and it was cut out by hand out of this card. So that was the first card that I had that I got of Jim Brown, and it just stimulated my interest in Jim Brown, who was a childhood hero, my favorite, still is my favorite, still is the greatest football player, and enjoyed watching him and seeing him play as a young man, and it was a tremendous activity for me to get involved in my retirement. So that spawned the interest in collecting more Jim Brown cards, and eventually I collected one of each, and then eventually turned to the professional sports authenticators to have the collection graded and played the set, entered my cards in the set registry, and had a lot of fun doing that. But about 19.
Kermit, now your PSA set in your registry set, didn't that get pretty high up there in the rankings?
Yeah, the PSA set, the master set of Jim Brown was #1. It was the best collection in the registry, and probably one of the best collections anyone could have accumulated. Because I started early enough in collecting that I was able to afford the collection. And yeah, this is interesting. Even goes back. This attests to my interest in the Browns back in the day. Actually, I started following the Browns around 1950. And what had happened, I got a portable radio as a Christmas gift. A big, clunky portable radio that had a massive battery in it. It was a very early portable radio. And I used to enjoy listening to the games. Because back in those days, not all of the games are televised, and very few early on in the 50s. And it wasn't until later that they became more staple in terms of television. But so I was very much interested in Otto Graham and all the players of that era. But then Jim Brown came along and just, in my mind, revolutionized football. I mean, he was just so superior at a time when running backs were, kind of heavy and clunky and not an Adonis build like he had. It was just so exciting. And listening to Gib Shanley broadcast the games on the radio, and the anticipation when Jim Brown would get the ball and he's running to the left, and you just had the feeling he was going to go all the way. I mean, every time he carried the ball, and listening to it on the radio, you just got so excited about it. And then 1964, happened to get married, and in
So that
June.
was the end of your Browns days, right?
Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. So, no, not quite actually. Although my wife never was a fan, but she did one thing that I'll forever appreciate her for. After we were married, during the ceremony, obviously afterwards at the reception, people were very generous, and we had some money. I was still in school at the time. I was working on a master's degree, and we had some extra money because of this wedding reception. And I asked her, I said, Joyce, is it possible that we would get tickets to the Browns, season tickets to the Browns game this year? Oh, and she said, Kerm, how much will it cost? I said, well, it would be about $100. $100? Are you crazy? Spending all that money for, oh, Joyce. And I begged her for about a month and a half, 2 months, kept bringing up the subject. And finally she said, oh, okay, go ahead and get them. So I bought the season's tickets. And we went to the games. There were 7 home games at the time. And we went to the early games. And then along the way, she got pregnant, and when I was unable to attend the games in the winter, November and December, so I happened to go to the season's finale with my best man, Greg Pierce at the time, and when the season was done, Joyce said, "Well, are you going to get the tickets for next year?" And I said, there's never going to be a season like this one, wherein the Browns beat the Colts 27-0 in the championship game. And I just figured that that was going to be hard to top that. Well, little did I know
Yeah.
that was
You're still waiting for that
that was
second
the
season.
last championship for the next 50 years. But I took the ticket stubs and put them in a scrapbook. For some reason, I saved all the stubs and a little program that came with it. And then after I discovered this Jim Brown collecting and began that in seriousness, I started thinking about the championship game. And having worked at the Western Reserve Historical Society, I was sensitive to history and to anniversaries and to celebrations. So I'm thinking, gosh, this is maybe 4 years from to now will be the 50th anniversary of the championship game, and somebody's going to do an exhibition. And well, I've got all these Jim Brown cards and this memorabilia and these tickets, and wow, well, I should be involved in that. So I thought to myself, well, we need this exhibition. You need to have visuals, so you need to have some memorabilia. And I had some cards and my tickets from the championship game, but I needed banners and photographs and jerseys and footballs. So fortunately, we had the greatest auctioneer in the Midwest, Paul Fusco, available to us, and he had these wonderful sports auctions, almost quarterly or more a year. And through the auctions and through online and eBay, I was able to accumulate enough material that I thought would make a worthy exhibition. Celebrating this. And then the Browns cooperated with me by not winning any more championships. Had they won the championship in the middle of it, that would have kind of killed killed the idea of having this 50th anniversary celebration. But nevertheless, we went forward with it and had a great display. The Historical Society accepted the idea, and we put on an exhibition on the 50th anniversary in 2014, and about 20 or 22 of the original players from the '64 team came and attended the reception on the opening night, and it was a great celebration and a great opportunity to recall the wonderful players of that era and what they contributed to the history of Cleveland and to sports in Cleveland, which is, as we know, has a great reputation for baseball and football and now basketball. Yeah, I have a one championship game ticket. My best man, attended the championship game with me, was unable to, because my wife was unable to attend, took his. Years later, I contacted him, by the way, and asked him if he managed to hold on to it, which he hadn't. I was always interested in history, I think, and that's maybe one of the reasons why I bothered to save the.
And you picked this up later on.
Yes, I picked
that
up
wasn't from
the program from the championship game at the Paul Fusco auction.
That's what I thought. I assumed you didn't get it at the game.
Yeah, I did not. A dollar?
Yeah.
No, I could. That was a lot of money in those days
Yeah.
too. You know, college student and newlywed. So yeah, these are, and then I saved all the game tickets and then put them in the scrapbook, so they've all been mounted before, but nevertheless, they're a complete set. And after the exhibition and after I completed the collection of Jim Brown cards, it just seemed to be time to maybe put the collection back in circulation to let somebody else have the opportunity to experience and enjoy some of this memorabilia.
It's kind of neat to think that whoever buys these is the second owner ever.
Yes, right.
They've never left your possession. That's
no, these are these are definitely authentic. There's no question about that. But you know, it was.
And it was a nice, warm, sunny day.
Yeah.
For the championship, right?
Oh, right. No, it was very cold that day, and it was miserable weather. And the field, the old municipal stadium, which people kind of joke about and tell stories about in a very negative way, but to some of us, it's quite a revered place. Yeah, we enjoyed attending games. I remember later on, when I had a chance to take my son to the old municipal stadium and experience some of the winter games there, it would seem like in the stadium, especially in the upper deck, if it was cold outside, it was freezing in the stadium. That cement and that concrete in that building just got so cold.
In the wind.
Oh, my goodness. So, yeah, at one point I remember my son couldn't even take the cold anymore and they had to leave a game before the Browns won in overtime in exciting fashion. But I stuck it out, and it was quite a time.
So I'm going to do one more memory lane question for you, Mr. Brown. Because you got to meet him at the '64 reunion, I assume.
Who's that?
Jim Brown.
No, he never. No, he never attended.
Okay. Have you ever met him personally?
No.
Okay. That's why I wasn't sure if you.
No, I never did. We extended invitations to him, and it was never able to attract him. You know.
But you had plenty of.
He's a.
Mementos.
You know, he's kind of a rare individual. As you know, his history after leaving the Browns took him in different directions, but his independence and his strength and his expressing, support for minorities and creating the Black Economic Union in Cleveland, trying to improve economic conditions among African American community. I mean, he was so far ahead of his time, and was a path setter and somebody who I admired greatly for his willingness to do unpopular things that he believed in and he thought was right. So, in any event.
And then, might be an unfair question to ask, but not non-Jim Brown related, something other than Jim Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a cherished item in your collection, like a single item that you'd say, other than Jim Brown, this is my favorite item? This I like the most, or
No, I don't know that I had any one thing that I appreciated. I thought one of the things that I was most attracted to and amused by were the bobbleheads that came out of that era, and it was fortunate to acquire a number of them that I think are quite unusual, but they became a very popular manifestation of football players, and it turns out to be quite interesting collectible. But those are some of my favorite items. Also, I have another item that I'm quite proud of, and that is my son, when he was in, I think, in middle school, did a paper mache image of Jim Brown and painted it and created it. And it's quite a cute likeness of Jim Brown, but it was a gift that he gave to me. Also, another indication of how much my interest and my appreciation of Jim Brown was spread throughout our family. They became quite aware of what I was doing.
and then more recent times, do you still frequent Browns games? Do you get to go to some here and there? Or
Yeah, I've been to. I'm not a regular goer right now. I've gone to one or two games a year. Most recently, I went with my son. As a matter of fact, my son went to a game. Was at the game Monday night. He was fortunate to go to that one. Enjoyed it greatly. But no, I enjoy watching them on television now. Um, in 1965, after they had won the championship, they practiced at Fleming Field on East 115th Street, which was part of Case Western Reserve University's athletic facilities. And on this field, Art Modell and the Browns built like a clubhouse, or not a clubhouse, but a practice facility for the players. And during the season, they practiced there. They were usually at Hiram or Lakeland Community College during the summer, but during the season, they practiced on this Fleming Field, named for Don Fleming, who was a star defensive back and died in a tragic accident in, I believe, 1962. But this field happened to be walking distance from the Historical Society. So on my lunch hours, I would walk over to 115th Street and peer through the chain link fence and watch the Browns practice. And I was within almost a reach of being able to touch Jim Brown or Paul Warfield or Frank Ryan. It was so exciting to be able to walk up to the fence with a handful of other people that would be standing there, or students, watching the Browns practice. And on occasion, I would go to lunch at the Big Penny, which is right at the corner of 115th and Euclid Avenue, and lo and behold, the Browns coaches would be eating lunch in the restaurant, right on, and so accessible, which you can contrast to today, where you have to buy tickets to watch and practice, and it's all guarded and protected and secret.
And if only then you would have thought 50 years later you would be
getting my gosh,
these guys back together.
Yeah, it was a different world back then, and the players were different. Most of them had second or third jobs, to make a living. They didn't make that much playing football, so it was a time when you could get up close and personal with the players.
Do you have a couple favorite players or a favorite player that they've come back?
Well, right now, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people share this sentiment, but Nick Chubb is I mean, he's the closest thing I've seen to Jim Brown, and he's just a wonderful player, physically, and the determination and the fight in him, and yet he has a quiet, calm demeanor, when he's not on the field. But he's just a ball of energy and dynamite. Fun to watch.
Too bad Joe Thomas wasn't there to block for him.
Oh, jeez, yeah. Joe Thomas is there. There is another guy that was just such a dominant player on an average or mediocre team. I mean, he really stood out, and much to his credit, I mean, he gave, like I think like Nick, they gave 100% regardless of the circumstances. Whether they're teams winning or losing, you can't tell by their performance. It was always top notch.
And then if the Browns make it to the Super Bowl, are you going?
Well, I sure would love to, and as a matter of fact, I had a dear friend lived in Columbus for many years. They would come up to Cleveland with their family, children, and stay over at our house, and we'd go to the Browns game, and we're always anticipating going to the Super Bowl. And in 1980, it looked like we would have an opportunity there. And then in the late 80s with the Bernie, the drive, the fumble, and oh my gosh. But we said, if they ever make it to the Super Bowl, we're going regardless. And even though the ticket prices, got to be outrageous, but we had pledged to go, and then unfortunately my friend passed away before we had that opportunity. But I'd like to think that I'd carry on and maybe attend that Super Bowl when it happens. Not if it happens, but when it happens.
So that's why you're really selling your collection to afford Super Bowl tickets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there.